اليوم فاتح على حسابه حزب الله.
Good afternoon. You're watching Future Television. I'm Yumna Naufal, and these are today's top stories. The Lebanese cabinet convenes with a decisive solution to set up 3 landfills on the outskirts of Beirut as protesters gather to voice their dissatisfaction. Lebanese army and Hezbollah fighters pound extremist posts along the country's northern border for a second day in a row. And John Kerry says that U.S. and Russian officials meet on Syrian opposition charges of truce violations by regime, but peace talks remain. The Lebanese cabinet is convening with a decisive solution to set up 3 landfills on the outskirts of the capital city of Beirut. Ministers expressed hope after the session that the government would be able to conclude the garbage crisis swiftly, underlining that their first and foremost concern is to collect waste from the streets of Beirut and Mount Lebanon. Ministers of various affiliations said that they are currently only concerned with the removal of mounds of garbage on the streets to relieve the sufferings of Lebanese people. Finance Minister Ali Hassan Khalil said that he will brief ministers during the session on the cost of the plan to establish landfills. Prime Minister Tamam Salam called for an extraordinary session after a 3-day series of meetings for the Ministerial Trash Committee tasked with resolving the crisis reached a consensus. The committee announced on Friday that they had agreed to establish a landfill in Costa Brava, south of Beirut, another in Burj Hamoud, northeastern of Beirut, and to temporarily reopen the infamous Naameh landfill. The Lebanese army and Hezbollah fighters are pounding extremist posts along the country's northeastern border for a second day in a row. The state-run national news agency reported that the army is intensely shelling the movement of gunmen on the outskirts of the border towns of Arsail and Ras Baalbek with heavy artillery. Separately, Hezbollah's Al-Manar channel said in a newsflash that the party's fighters targeted an ISIS post on the outskirts of Baalbek. The army and Hezbollah have been targeting ISIS posts along the country's northeastern mountain range since Thursday, when the military clashed with extremist gunmen on Baalbek's outskirts, killing 5 and wounding several others. U.S. and Russian officials met on Syrian opposition charges of truce violations by the regime, but peace talks remain on course, according to U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry. Asked at the end of a visit to Saudi Arabia whether indirect dialogue in Geneva between the Syrian regime and opposition could go ahead as planned, Kerry said, sure it can. Air raids by the Syrian regime killed 7 civilians in rebel-held areas of second city Aleppo on Friday, according to the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights. The Britain-based monitoring group termed the strikes as the most serious violation in the city since the truce came into effect. But Kerry, who met Saudi Arabia's King Salman for talks on Syria, said that perceived violations of the ceasefire that went into effect on February 27th should not derail the UN-mediated peace talks. And so the Syrian government delegation to shaky peace talks in Geneva will wait no more than 24 hours for the opposition delegation to arrive, according to the country's foreign minister. He was quoted as saying that his delegation will leave for Geneva tomorrow and they will only wait 24 hours, and if no one is there, then they will return. These are the words of Walid Ma'alem at a news conference in Damascus. Well, he insisted that the opposition delegation take part in talks at the UN headquarters in the Swiss city, deriding them for spending the last round in hotels. The last round of talks in Geneva between the government and main opposition body, the High Negotiations Committee, collapsed in February. At the time, the HNC delegation arrived in Switzerland roughly 36 hours after the government, but waited another 2 days to head to the UN headquarters. Both the government and the HNC have agreed to participate in a fresh round of talks in Geneva starting Monday. Coming up next, Chicago Police Department says that Trump's campaign decision to cancel a rally because of disruptions came as a complete surprise. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back. We have the pleasure to welcome in our studios Tara Kankhaus, the National Director of Marketing and Public Relations of Isaac in Lebanon. Tara, thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
You're here today to talk about Isaac in Lebanon, and specifically today, as we speak, there are workshops going on at the American University of Beirut. This morning, there was a panel, a very interesting panel, that centered around results of a Youth Speak survey, which basically surveyed a lot of young people, I think it was 700 people, to see what they thought about the situation in Lebanon, what they thought about the job market, government, employment, social media. And it found that 55% of young people think that Lebanon will be worse in 2030. So can you tell me a little bit about this survey and what it did say about Lebanon?
Yeah, for sure. The You Speak survey is a global survey done by ISAC with the idea to capture the youth voice all over the world. ISAC is an organization, we're in 129 countries right now, and we capture the youth voice to make sure that young people are heard and also that they know themselves what other young people want, what are the major issues in their societies, and that they can act on them. So right now we have over 90,000 voices worldwide, and over 700 of them come out of Lebanon. And today, like you said, we had the event to actually gather young people together and make sure that the issues that come out of that survey, and for example the pessimism of young people that you just mentioned, that young people get a chance to work together and with other stakeholders to work to actually make sure that in 15 years Lebanon will be better.
Okay. You know, a lot of these young people, they said that, you know, they don't trust government. They don't trust politicians. It's funny that we're talking about this on a day where protests are taking place in Sassin Square, protests that have, you know, accumulated over the month, over the waste crisis that Lebanon has known now for about 8 months. So it's very easy for them to lose hope and to feel helpless when it comes to the situation here. So how do the workshops help in changing that aspect for the young people?
I think what the workshops do is they, through the examples of other stakeholders like our partners from corporate or from NGOs, they give examples of what it is that we can do. I mean, I think that the pessimism or the losing of hope is usually because people don't know what they can do. But if you see all the young people gathering today, whether it's in the streets or in the workshops today with us, these are young people that want to do something for Lebanon and that want to do something for the world. And the workshops and the events will help them to actually gain the tools to make it happen.
And it also, it seems, puts them in direct contact with, as you said, potential stakeholders and maybe also potential future employers.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And networking as well. We were talking about how important networking was a little bit with you before before this interview. What would you say sticks out when it comes to Lebanon? What stands out here?
When it comes to Lebanon?
When it comes to the youth in Lebanon, you know, I know you've been around a lot of, you know, working for ISAC, you've been a lot around young people and students. And what is the major thing you constantly hear, or the thing you think stands out when it comes to the Lebanese people?
The major thing that stands out for me personally, but also in the Youth Speak survey, is that you see that young people are very passionate about Lebanon. They're very passionate around any issue within their country, whether it's the refugees, the situation of education, the garbage crisis, anything around that. Young people are very passionate to do something about it, but they're just looking for the tools also and the help and maybe the networks or the support to make sure that they can.
How long has ISAC Lebanon been in Lebanon?
We've been here since 2010 already.
Okay, so 6 years.
Yeah.
And you've been here only a year.
Yeah.
So I know I asked you this and I wanted our viewers to take something from it. When you leave at the end of July, I think that's when it ends for you. What are you taking with you from this country?
To be honest, I'm not even sure I'm leaving.
Okay. But you want to stay, which is a great thing for us.
Yeah, it's an option. There's many options, but Lebanon is definitely one of them. What I will take with me for sure is, like I just said, the passion of the people, the warmth of people, the increased, you know, the ambition that young people have for themselves and for Lebanon. And I just really hope that everyone that I talk to, or that everyone that comes to these kind of events, that they make it happen for themselves and for Lebanon.
Thank you. Well, that's the hope for all of us. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
That was Tara Kenkhaus, the National Director of Marketing and Public Relations of ISAC in Lebanon, talking to us about ISAC and its services. Thank you so much.
Welcome. Thank you.
Continuing with our news, fragments from a missile fired by an Israeli aircraft killed a 10-year-old Palestinian boy, also named Yassin Abu Husa, in Hamas-controlled Gaza. Medical officials are saying this came hours after militant launched rockets into Israel. The boy's 20-year-old brother, Akram Abu Husa, described what happened. He said residents of Beit Lahia in the northern Gaza Strip Yassine died after missile debris hit his home, which is situated next to a militant training camp. The fatality from airstrikes in Gaza was the first since last October. The Israeli army said that since the beginning of the year, and including Friday's salvo, 7 rockets have been fired from the Gaza Strip into Israel. Israeli military spokesman Lieutenant Colonel Peter Lerner said the rocket strike was an effort by militants to threaten the security and safety of the people of southern Israel. The military, he said, will continue to act to protect against those who threaten innocent lives and Israel's sovereignty. U.S. President Barack Obama paid a visit to the South by Southwest Festival in Austin, Texas, where he called on technology leaders to help solve the country's biggest challenges. The president's appearance marked the first by a sitting president in the festival's 30-year history, according to local media.
I mean, imagine what Trump would say if he actually had a record like this. Instead of selling steaks. Has anybody tried that wine? How good can that wine be? I'm sorry. Where was I? We've got a debate inside the other party that is fantasy and schoolyard taunts and selling stuff like it's the Home Shopping Network. And then you've got the Republican establishment. They're very exercised. We're shocked that somebody would be saying these things. How can you be shocked? This is the guy, remember, who was sure that I was born in Kenya. Who just wouldn't let it go. And all this same Republican establishment, they weren't saying nothing. I don't take pleasure in seeing what's going on the other side. We need a healthy two-party system. We've got to have serious debate. And Democrats need to have somebody who's questioning and challenging some of our own dogmas and our own blind spots.
This marks the end of our bulletin. Now for a reminder of our headlines. Lebanese cabinet convenes with a decisive solution to set up 3 landfills on the outskirts of Beirut. Protesters gather to voice their dissatisfaction. The Lebanese army and Hezbollah fighters pound extremist posts along the country's northeastern border for a second day in a row. And John Kerry says that U.S. and Russian officials will meet on Syrian opposition charges of truce violations, and the regime peace talks remain. Those are your headlines live on Future Television. We go now live to what is happening on the streets.
واليوم فتح على حسابه حزب الله.
مشاهدينا الكرام، سننتقل مباشرة إلى مسيرة الحراك المدني وحزب الكتائب، وهو سينطلق من الأشرفية نحو السرايا اعتراضا على التأخر في حل مسألة النفايات. وتوافينا